Good evening. In tonight's news, the chairman of the Mount Gambier Hospital, Mrs Margaret Considine, refutes claims of ostrich-like actions by the hospital. The prolonged bad weather currently being experienced in the southeast is beginning to take its toll, and a national opinion poll released today shows that more than 66% of committed voters in South Australia intend voting yes to question 3 at the referendum on September 3rd. Tomorrow's weather should be cool to cold, with an estimated maximum of 14 for Mount Gambier, 16 for Keith and 15 for Narracourt. I'll be back shortly with those stories and more in the regional news, presented by Fimmels First National.
A leaky pipe or cracked foundation is not only messy, it often means an expensive repair job. Well, now, thanks to Leak Sealer, the super effective all-purpose sealant, you can put an end to leaking pipes. Permanently seal cracks in walls and foundations, quickly, easily and for just a small fraction of what a professional would charge. Leak Sealer is always ready to use. All you do is just shake, point and spray. Instantly you have a permanent bonded seal. Just watch. We'll let water run through this household vegetable strainer. Now we'll spray the strainer with Leak Sealer. And look, not a drop of water comes through the strainer. It's been completely sealed watertight. Best of all, Leak Sealer works on any surface. Use it to insulate around windows and doors, then paint right over it. Leak Sealer will not crack, peel or become brittle. All-purpose Leak Sealer is guaranteed to perform to your complete satisfaction. If you don't agree it's the easiest, quickest way to seal cracks and leaks, simply return it to place of purchase for full refund.
Available at these stores now.
The chairman of the Mount Gambier Hospital Board, Mrs Margaret Considine, today expressed disappointment over allegations that the hospital was acting in an ostrich-like manner in its attempts to solve looming morale and administration problems.
Mrs Considine believes that the hospital has tried to be as open as possible with all people concerned and has attempted to address the proposed problems of the hospital from every possible angle. She says that the remarks by the member for Mount Gambier, Mr Harold Allison, were unfair and surprising, especially in the light that Mr Allison had not, as yet, conferred with the board on the matter.
We haven't acted in an ostrich-like manner. The community probably are slightly confused with issues surrounding the hospital, but quite clearly we have acted very responsibly.
The closing date for complaints to the Hospital Review Committee is this Sunday, and Mrs Considine says once all submissions have been collected, people voicing a concern will be contacted and given the opportunity for an interview with the committee. Interviews are scheduled for the second week of August at the TAFE College, a location which Mrs Considine says is neutral territory. The hospital will also attempt to clarify problems at 2 separate meetings tomorrow. The first meeting will be with members of the media, where discussions will be held concerning the media's coverage of staff morale problems at the hospital. The second meeting will be with staff members, where future hospital development plans will be discussed.
Record heavy rainfalls and strong winds currently being experienced in the southeast are, according to the livestock advisor with the Mount Gambier Department of Agriculture, Mr Rob Mugford, beginning to take their toll.
Maximum wind gusts of 83 kilometres per hour were recorded by the Mount Gambier Weather Bureau yesterday. The Queen Elizabeth Caravan Park recorded 7.8 millimetres of rain in the 24 hours to 9 this morning. Sergeant E. Qualman of Mount Gambier Police said today that surprisingly there had been no reported accidents due to the wet weather. He attributed that fact to cautious driving by motorists under the conditions. The Narracourt Creek is being closely monitored and is considerably swollen. Police say if the heavy rain continues, it may flood again. A spokesman for ETSA said today that the gusty winds had caused a connection in the electrical wiring which connects the Donovan power supply to break free. As a result, power at Donovan's was cut for 45 minutes last night.
A national opinion poll released today shows that more than 66% of committed voters in South Australia intend voting yes to question 3 for constitutional recognition for local government at the referendum.
From your observations, do you think that the 66% is a true representation of local voters' intentions and will therefore ensure the acceptance of question 3 at the referendum on September 3rd?
Well, from the people that I've talked to, and I've never asked anyone, I think it's rude to say, how do you intend to vote? That's a personal thing. But I would say yes, I believe it is. And the general reason that they give, and I'll read it here, is their opinion is that it's sensible that the Constitution should reflect reality. So in other words, they're saying that it exists, so why should we be afraid to recognise it?
The 6-hour curfew for live weight sale of cattle was abolished yesterday. The Victorian Farmers Federation Pastoral Group Director, Mr Kevin Schill, explains why this step has been taken.
Well, research that's been done in the past by the Department of Agriculture indicates that there's no need for a 6-hour withholding period prior to weighing of cattle. The access to water in advance when they come into the sale yard is sufficient to level out and even out the influence of gut fill. The Code of Practice Review Committee has been amended to provide that just a half-hour access to water prior to weighing will now be sufficient. The buyers have indicated quite clearly by their purchasing of cattle across private scales that they are happy to purchase without a curfew in other arrangements, but I understand that there is to be some buyer reaction against this move, and we would hope that vendors and agents and sale yard operators will ensure that vendors have the opportunity to sell by live weight, and they will resist any opposition to re-establishing a reasonable arrangement with a very short curfew period in sale yards for the sale of live weight cattle.
In early May this year, a committee was formed to examine the possibility of a truck bypass route around Penola. The committee was formed in the wake of an accident which demolished a service station in the town.
The Alternative Heavy Traffic Route Committee represents a cross-section of the district, including local government, business, rural, urban and commerce. To date, this committee has made a tour of South Australian towns that have a heavy traffic bypass and discussed with mayors, Chamber of Commerce presidents and retailers the effect, if any, an alternative traffic route has had on their towns. Last month, the committee distributed questionnaires to the public of Penola to ascertain their opinions about bypassing heavy traffic around the town. According to committee members, response to the questionnaire has been positive. Results will be collated by the end of July and a report submitted to Penola District Council.
A new multi-million-dollar store in Adelaide has opened its food hall for business, but the owners still aren't happy. David Jones has been refused a liquor licence and is appealing to the Supreme Court.
David Jones has been refused a licence once before, and management isn't optimistic it'll win its second application. Sydney and Melbourne stores have one, however Adelaide doesn't see it as a serious setback. Instead, the store's new food hall caused a culinary revolution when it opened today. Every exotic taste is catered for, like Scottish salmon at more than $85 a kilogram. The most expensive item is Russian caviar for more than $1,500 a kilogram. So valuable is the caviar selection that the fridge door will eventually be padlocked. And while some of the prices are inflated, it doesn't seem to bother anyone.
I haven't looked at the price. If we want something, I'm afraid we just get it and that's it. It's marvellous. Not only marvellous, but it's tempting too.
Food and Catering Director Ivan Hughes says very little is ordinary, but despite that, shoppers are buying as well as looking.
A bit of both at the moment, unfortunately. No, a lot of lookers and a lot of buyers. A lot of regulars, particularly with our bread and our cakes. Yeah, they're certainly buying.
That includes rabbit and crocodile sausages.
3 sheep owned by Grant High School were attacked and killed this morning on the outskirts of the city area. Leslie DiMuccio with more.
Grant High School has an extensive agriculture course and the sheep were part of practical studies. They were kept on land that the school rents from the City Council on the slopes of the Blue Lake. At about 8:30 this morning they were viciously attacked and killed by 2 dogs. Mr Doug Beaton, who lives adjacent the reserve where the sheep were, heard noises this morning and his quick thinking resulted in the attack being videotaped. Police who attended the grisly scene this morning will view the tape in an effort to find the dogs. The Vice Chairman of the School Council, Mr Graham Earl, is involved with the agricultural courses at the school and he had a stern warning for dog owners today.
Well, yeah, I certainly have. Keep your dogs tied up, make sure you know where they are, and you know, I guess that it always is potentially a problem on the edge of town. If there's dogs that aren't tied up or well cared for, they're likely to roam around and get up to mischief, and certainly they've done this here in a very dramatic way.
The member for Mount Gambier, Mr Harold Allison, has returned from a 6-week tour of the United Kingdom where he was updated on many contentious world issues. 180 country fire service personnel participated in a training day in the Mount Shank area on Sunday, and popular children's entertainer Mr Peter Combe delighted children from Mount Gambier during his performances at the Sir Robert Hiltman Theatre today. Those stories and more in the regional news after this break.
Over the next 2 months, Channel 8 will be conducting a further series of public forums. Once again, you're invited to come along and discuss your concerns in relation to our service with a panel of Channel 8 senior executives and company directors. We'll be visiting major centres in the southeast of South Australia and Western Victoria.
Public forums will be held in the Kingston Institute at 7:30 Tuesday, August 2nd, and the Naracoorte Council Chambers 7:30 Monday, August 8th.
The member for Mount Gambier, Mr Harold Allison, has recently returned from a 6-week tour of the United Kingdom. His tour has served to inform Mr Allison about many contentious issues in the steel, nuclear power, trade and dairy industries.
Mr Allison, what did your tour include?
The main part of the tour was the inspection of nuclear facilities, the generation of electricity by nuclear means, and subsequently the enrichment of nuclear fuel by Britain, Holland, United States, and also the pressing problem of waste management, nuclear waste management, which Britain is well advanced in.
How can you relate what you saw to the Mount Gambier area?
Well, both the Liberal and Labour parties in Australia have been wrestling with the problem of export of uranium, whether to enrich nuclear fuels, and how to deal with the worldwide problems associated with the generation of electricity by nuclear power. I reached the reluctant conclusion that nuclear power will be with us for at least another century because alternative means of generation haven't yet been perfected, that is the engineering techniques as opposed to the physical and chemical techniques. And as a result, it's something that we have to react to, and I'll be putting in a substantial report to State Parliament.
Mr Allison says he hopes to use the information gathered to make the people of Mount Gambier more aware of these issues and just how they are being catered for on a world scale. One issue of particular interest, Mr Allison says, is the repercussions for Australia of the decision to open up the trade barriers of the European Economic Community in 1992.
180 personnel took part in a country fire service training day held on Sunday.
CFS trucks from Millicent, Mount Gambier, Port Macdonnell and Victoria were utilised in the various training exercises which took place during the day in the Mount Shank area. Exercises included putting out a running grass fire, rescuing people from a smoke-filled house, containing an oil fire and completing an obstacle course. The group captain of the Port Macdonnell CFS, Mr Peter Norman, said the training day was organised to train personnel in modern fire techniques. The day was organised by Port Macdonnell Training Committee members Mr Richard Sage, Mr Malcolm Unger and Mr Peter Norman, who say the day was extremely successful.
Mount Gambier school children have been delighted this week by children's entertainer Mr Peter Combe. Mr Combe is currently on a tour of the southeast area and he's playing to packed houses everywhere he goes.
Peter Combe is an entertainer in the true sense of the word. He loves making people, especially children, laugh and sing. Recently, his performances in Adelaide were so successful that they had to be moved from the Adelaide Town Hall to the Festival Theatre to accommodate the audience. Channel 8 caught up with Peter today after one of his performances.
Peter, why do you do this sort of thing?
Because I'm mad. No. But actually, it's one of those jobs where you couldn't do it unless you really liked it a lot. I mean, you have to not just like it, but like it a lot. And I really do enjoy it very much. And I think you also have to actually enjoy children. You have to enjoy their sense of humour, their sense of the ridiculous, and because you really have to have that working with kids. And yeah, so I basically enjoy it because I like doing it.
Is audience participation, does it play a big part in what you do?
Yeah, it does. It's a really quite fundamental part of the show. Because I guess in an age where videos predominate, there's a terrible tendency for kids to become very passive. They sit in front of a television set and they really just kind of, very passive. And that's what my daughter does anyway. So it's really nice to come into a live theatre situation and the kids to really get involved and really sing the song with gusto, which they do. So yeah, that's a pretty important part of the show.
Kingston will host a regional meeting of Friends of Libraries on August the 4th. The chairman of the Kingston Friends of the Library, Mr Don Connell, explains the format of the day.
At 11:20 we have Professor Horn from the Adelaide University, and he'll be speaking on the future and importance of Friends of the Library. He'll be followed by Marie Garcia, who is the State Library Public Relations Officer, and her subject will be Get Yourself Known as far as the Friends are concerned. We'll take a break for lunch, and then immediately after lunch we'll have a business session where we'll break into smaller groups, workshops with the two guest speakers, and then a report back and summary at 2:30.
Well, Friends of the Library is a popular concept. Why has it taken off quite so well?
Well, taking off throughout South Australia because libraries are becoming more important in the community, and Friends of the Library is one way of extending the service provided by the librarians.
There has been a breakthrough in the bitter dispute over the colour of ambulance officers' jackets. The problem started when volunteers were supplied with the same colour as paid staff. Union members banned the supply of blue jackets to volunteers, saying they should wear black.
While volunteer ambulance officers are going blue from the cold, Union and St John representatives are arguing themselves blue in the face over black fleecy jackets. While paid staff are happy to see their volunteer colleagues supplied with official St John jackets, they're a bit dark that they're exactly the same as theirs, and they've banned the distribution of the jackets, leaving the volunteers out in the cold.
Do you understand that looking from the outside it seems fairly petty? It certainly does, I can see that. But what should be understood is this issue is perhaps just the tip of an iceberg of a rather large alienation of the employees of St John from St John.
It always seems to come back to the much reported animosity between volunteers and the paid staff, and that's something St John would like to avoid, as both are essential to our unique ambulance service. The paid professionals say they want the volunteers to wear black rather than blue jackets. The man caught in the middle is Deputy General Manager John Rawes.
Well, we made every reasonable effort to acquire the black material to manufacture those fleecy lined jackets, and simply stated, no suitable material could be found.
There's no doubt someone in need of an ambulance would be glad to see help arrive in any coloured jacket. Late today in the Arbitration Commission, the paid officers agreed to lift the bans and allow volunteers to wear the blue jackets if they're suitably marked.
Earlier this year, 6 people left Penola to take part in the camel race from Ayers Rock to the Gold Coast. They returned to Penola this week, and Channel 8 spoke to them about their journey.
How well did the team from Penola fare?
Oh, it went fairly good. We got 8th overall over the whole trip, so we were quite happy.
What's the future for the camels?
Well, Twiggy, she's a little bit sore in the back, so she'll have to stay home and rest for a while. And Young Rescue, who Dad rode in the race to 8th overall, will probably have a rest as well. And then they'll be back to raising some money for the crippled children's, I suppose.
And are you glad to be back home?
Yes, we're all very glad to be back home again. Back to our nice cool weather.
Major department stores are under